On November 6th, AMC will premiere its latest original series, Hell on Wheels. And what do you know? It's a Western. Both Hollywood and audiences have a love-hate relationship with the genre, always singing its praises yet rarely tuning in or showing up at the box office. Is AMC really in a position to roll the dice right now, considering how they've recently faltered in the court of public opinion? First, they almost lost Mad Men when the show's contract came up for renewal, and the large amount of money they ended up having to fork over to Matthew Weiner and Company has sent shockwaves through the network. They could barely afford to keep Breaking Bad for its final season and had to make serious cuts to the budget of The Walking Dead, not to mention fire series co-creator Frank Darabont. Oh yeah, and then there was that non-ending to the first season of The Killing, which they even refused to apologize for. I'm still upset about that. So maybe this is the right time for a new series, to not only take everyone's mind off of those missteps, but to steal back some of that original cable programming thunder from HBO and their mega hit Game of Thrones. Hell on Wheels takes place in the 1860s as a former Confederate soldier seeks revenge on the Union soldiers who murdered his wife. Evil Union soldiers? This show is edgy. He ends up in a floating town that follows the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad. Anson Mount finally gets the chance to star in something while Common co-stars as a recently freed slave. The whole thing was dreamed up by screenwriting brothers Joe and Tony Gayton, who previously wrote The Salton Sea, Murder by Numbers, and Faster. So to get you ready for this unconventional Western, here's an unconventional top 10 Westerns list. Number 10 is the 2010 remake of True Grit. The Coen brothers felt the John Wayne classic, which won the Hollywood legend the Academy Award for Best Actor, needed to be remade in a way that was more faithful to the original book. The biggest change they made was that the 14-year-old girl who hires U.S. Marshal Rooster Cogburn to bring her father's murderer to justice is now the focus of the film, and the Coen brothers took a big risk by casting an unknown. But it paid off big time as Haley Steinfeld went on to overshadow her big league co-stars like Jeff Bridges and Matt Damon to earn her own Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. If you doubt a 14-year-old girl can have true grit, you haven't met Maddie Ross. That's right, at number 9 is Back to the Future Part 3. Everyone has a favorite Back to the Future movie, and while for few people it's Part 3, for me it is. And while I'm sure a few of you purists are highly tempted right about now to say this list sucks, I did tell you it would be unconventional. And visiting the Old West was actually Michael J. Fox's idea, as who doesn't want to play cowboys and Indians for real? This final installment of the trilogy represents all the aspects of the Western genre we love, while repeating certain jokes from the first two Back to the Future films with a degree of success that eluded The Hangover 2. Number 8 is Desperado, part of Robert Rodriguez's Mariachi trilogy. The first film was El Mariachi, made for just $7,000, much of which was raised by Rodriguez volunteering for medical testing. It starred an amateur cast, but Columbia Pictures was so impressed they not only gave it a theatrical release, but funded the rest of the trilogy. Things certainly heated up for the second installment, where Antonio Banderas took on the lead role and was joined by Steve Buscemi, Cheech Martin, Quentin Tarantino, and Selma Hayek in what became her big breakout role in the U.S. Plus, with music from Los Lobos, the second Mariachi really sings. If you want to check out the final installment as well, it's Once Upon a Time in Mexico, which brought Johnny Depp into the mix as a sociopathic CIA agent. Classic Johnny Depp. Back in the early 1990s, two films about Wyatt Earp came out back-to-back. Tombstone in 1993 and Kevin Costner's Wyatt Earp in 1994. Many expected the Costner version to be superior, seeing as how the actor was on a career high post Dances with Wolves, Robin Hood, JFK, The Bodyguard, and A Perfect World. Not to mention the film was written and directed by Lawrence Kasdan. But surprise, surprise, it was the Kurt Russell version that captured audiences' hearts. Some could say because it looted the box office first. Others could say because of Val Kilmer's inspired turn as Doc Holliday. Tombstone might not have won any awards or made $100 million at the box office, but it's a shining example of solid, fun Hollywood movie making. And there ain't nothing wrong with that. A Western that did win a lot of awards and made over $100 million at the box office is Unforgiven, Clint Eastwood's tour de force, and number 6 on this list. It was Eastwood's return to the genre that had made him a star, and with Unforgiven, he transformed it. While cowboys had always been portrayed by Hollywood as having a moral code, Eastwood countered that the Old West was truly a lawless place where there were no good men. Yes, even Morgan Freeman is dubious in this movie. Eastwood actually waited to make the film so he'd be old enough to play retired killer William Muni, and so that Unforgiven could be his last Western. So far, it is, if you don't count Space Cowboys. Now, a lot of people might say that The Searchers is John Wayne's finest work, but one afternoon I found myself watching Stagecoach and couldn't turn it off. This is actually the movie that made him a major star, and it's directed by one of the men who helped define the entire genre, John Ford. Ford, who'd come up through the silent era, made his first Western with sound with Stagecoach, and had to campaign heavily to cast Wayne in the lead role. The film tells the story of several strangers traveling together on a stagecoach, including a pregnant prostitute and an alcoholic doctor. Things get tricky when a U.S. Marshal uses the stagecoach to transport a fugitive played by Wayne, and even trickier when they find themselves under attack by Indians. Stagecoach is also noteworthy for Ford's use of real Indians, not the painted stand-ins Hollywood had so shamefully used for decades before and after the film. Number 4 is Giant, a film which tells how the men of the Old West were turned into the new rich with the discovery of oil. Rock Hudson stars as a young Texas oil baron who goes to Maryland to buy a horse and comes back with a wife, Elizabeth Taylor. Their marriage becomes a love triangle thanks to ranch hand Jet, played by James Dean, in his last role before he tragically died in a car accident. This is widescreen Technicolor melodrama at its best, long before Dallas ever aired on TV. Giant also deals with racism against Mexican Americans, making it a film way ahead of its time. It was a huge hit both critically and commercially, going on to win George Stevens the Academy Award for Best Director, an award he didn't win 2 years earlier for another more famous Western, Shane. At number 3, I'm putting The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Like its title, this movie is long, clocking in at 2 hours and 40 minutes. And while it was largely panned by the critics, that could be chalked up not just to high expectations, but expecting a more traditional Western. This movie is not traditional, and I think that because I was dragged to see it in the first place, that allowed me to be pleasantly surprised. Taking a few pages from Terrence Malick's book, director Andrew Dominic creates the feeling of what it must have actually been like to be in Jesse James's gang, including very long periods of waiting around between jobs. Plus, while Brad Pitt is always charismatic, this is truly Casey Affleck's movie. His fascinating turn as the truly cowardly and creepy Robert Ford garnered him several award nominations, and is part of why Casey is considered a solid actor these days. The other part is his brother Ben, who cast him as the lead in Gone Baby Gone that very same year. What a year! Number 2 on this list is the 2007 remake of 3:10 to Yuma, which is not only an excellent Western, but holds a special place in my heart, as it's one of the 2 movies I covered on the very first day I did review, the predecessor of this show. If you're wondering what the other movie was, it was Shoot 'em Up. 3:10 to Yuma features Christian Bale as a man just trying to earn some money to support his family. Too bad to earn it, he has to help escort an arrested criminal, played by Russell Crowe, to a railroad station. Over the course of their journey, Crowe's character is shocked to discover that there are good men in the Old West. Sorry, Clint Eastwood. The film also co-stars Ben Foster, the coolest gay cowboy you will ever see. Ironically, number 1 on this list is not a movie, but Deadwood is just that good. The series ran on HBO for 3 seasons, and it wasn't easy. Despite critical praise and inspiring a cult following, this was another one of those examples where a big audience just didn't show up for a Western. The show's creators had held out hope for a 4th season and perhaps even 2 television films to wrap things up, but they never materialized, and thus Deadwood was robbed of a proper ending. And you thought the Old West was tough, but Deadwood gave as good as it got, and got quite the reputation for its profanity-drenched episodes. It also made stars of Timothy Oliphant as Sheriff Seth Bullock, and Ian McShane as the man pulling all the strings in town, Al Swearingen. Truth be said, nobody can swear with such charm quite like McShane. And after you catch all 3 seasons, you'll be cursing out HBO for canceling Deadwood. So that's my unconventional list of top 10 Westerns. Feel free to leave your own suggestions in the comments down below, as well as your thoughts on Hell on Wheels after it premieres on AMC. I'm Grace Randolph, and this has been a Movie Bite. You can watch more right now.